Welcome, everybody. Right on time, 5 o'clock on the dot. Jamie said that there's been some talk in Discord, so here we are. On time with the complaints about being late. We're here. It's 5 o'clock on a Thursday night. We're just a couple days away from the Chargers wild card matchup. They got the Saturday night opener, playoff opener, that kind of feels like the Texans slot. Because I think I saw all 8 of their playoff appearances in the history of that franchise has been in this exact time slot in that Saturday afternoon. And the Chargers got it. They're going on the road, playing Houston for a wild card matchup, 4 versus 5. They got a little help from the Steelers, and now they're taking the matchup that we had all hoped they would get, and they're going to play the Houston Texans on Saturday afternoon. We're going to do a big-time preview here. We're going to break down matchups of the Chargers offense going against the Texans defense. We'll talk about the Texans offense. We'll talk about special teams, everything in between, special matchups. But what we did is we all individually came up with key things, kind of keys to this game, offensively for the Chargers, defensively for the Chargers, and vice versa for the Texans. So we're each going to hit on those first, and then we'll do a little prediction at the end, whether we think they'll actually win this game.
We're not really doing special teams, are we?
Well, I mean, not really, no, but no, I don't want to, but you had brought it up, so I thought maybe you had something to say about it. I don't. Okay, cool. So that was
what I was hoping to pass it off on somebody else.
There you go. That's our special teams wrap up. You just heard it. All done. How are you guys, before we get into kind of matchups and previews, how are you guys feeling about this matchup heading into the weekend?
I feel good about it. It's the matchup that I wanted. I think the Texans are struggling down the stretch. They're showing definitely some chinks in the armor on offense in particular. I think there are a lot of opportunities for the Chargers to match up well with them and create some challenges for the Texans. And I think this is a game that's eminently winnable for the Chargers. So I feel great. This is the one I wanted. They got the one I wanted, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so the chips basically fell exactly how they needed to in order for the Chargers to get the 5th seed. It's what I would assume all of us were rooting for, because I don't believe anyone wanted to travel to Baltimore right about now. But yeah, these are two teams on different trajectories, it would appear. Of course, the Texans won their last game, but I mean, look who it was against. I believe they beat the Titans, correct? So whoopee. And the Chargers have reeled off on multiple games and are averaging over 30 points per in 3 straight wins. So I would say that just on the outside looking in, this is ideal for the Chargers and what they're looking to do as far as moving throughout the playoffs. But it's not a team that you want to take for granted. They do have some explosive weapons. They can make some things happen on the defensive side of the ball. And as far as matchups are concerned, there are some that are more advantageous to the Chargers than others, but you could also say the same about the Texans. It's sort of a mirror match in certain aspects.
Yeah, when you look at like defensive rankings and ranking offensive rankings, they're all kind of like seem like they kind of match up and they're all on the same level. But there are some matchups that we should talk about. And let's jump right into it. Jamie, you can start. You can start with the Chargers offense going against this Texans defense. Offensively for the Chargers, if you're Greg Roman, what's kind of a big point of emphasis you want to go hitting on Saturday?
Well, for me, I think you need to do things to use the Texans' speed and aggressiveness on defense against them. I think that's going to be really important for the Chargers. So one way that I think that you can do that is to use a lot of window dressing, a lot of condensed formations, stack, bunch, trips, things like that, things that challenge spacing and communication. I think you want to get the offensive linemen moving post snap, pulling, climbing, tight ends, pulling and climbing as well. Get some orbit motion going, some jet motion, give them different things to think about. The speed on defense and the aggressiveness on defense is a big strength of the Texans, but it can lead to them being undisciplined. And I think if you throw things at them, make their defensive ends stop and think, give their corners and their linebackers something else to look at, you can sneak guys past them into voids in the defense for big plays. So to me, I think it's really just about creating chaos and creating confusion and communication issues with, like I said, window dressing, pre-snap motion, offensive line climbing and pulling post-snap, Craig's going to get into the running game, and I can add on to it when he gets in there. I don't want to steal his thunder, but you're really looking at being physical and running downhill. And you're really trying to confuse them and give them some pause and something to think about as they're charging upfield.
Yeah, Craig, you want to jump into that since he kind of lead you into it?
Yeah, for sure. Good intro, Jamie. I appreciate that. So as far as offensively, what you want to do is definitely attack the interior of the Texas defense. They're well below average on the interior defensive line. So like we know some of the names here: Tim Settle, Fuller Unsu, Fatakasi, Danico Autry's back this week, I believe. I know he was out a bit with injury, but all three cheeks as run defenders. So to me, honestly, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson are probably significantly better run defenders at their respective edge positions. But specifically, Settle and Fatakasi over the last 3 weeks have been terrible. So I want to see just like a resurgence of the power run game. So, dominate both A and B gaps. That means I want to see duo early and often. You can run it out of 21, 22 sets, maybe throw some double teams on the interior. Definitely throw double teams on the interior running duo, but lead up to the second level with Scott Matlock. Just punish their interior defensive line. And I mean, in addition to that, just like for the balance, Jamie's probably going to speak to this a little bit more because we had a little bit of a side conversation about it. Those edge defenders kind of have a tendency to come screaming upfield, specifically when they think they've identified a tendency, like kind of based on formation. So you want to hit them with some misdirections, like counters. You can even run some trap concepts to get bigger bodies like Zion. I know I said Zion, but go with me here. Or Salyer on a blindside block on Hunter or Anderson. Smaller bodies, guys who don't see them coming, for some really nice ear hole blocks and knocking guys out of holes to create some gashes for your running backs to run through and take advantage of. I'd also like to see a little bit more with regard to like pistol sets as far as the offense goes. Herbert can do a whole lot from there. It's just like regulatory shotgun. You have the visibility from there, but you have a lot of two-way goes as far as the running back's concerned, being right behind you. So it's a little less predictable. And you have the run pass option with Herbert there as well, because I think you'll probably see him use his legs a little bit this week too. So just overall, I really like the Chargers' opportunities offensively, and like even speaking to like the Texans base defense, I'm pretty sure they run a 4-3 base, but when they roll out in that nickel that nickel coverage, Kamari Lassiter has a tendency to like kick into the slot and Jeff Okudah will play the boundary, but Lassiter is still a pretty decent run defender. Even then, you can still have what you want in a running game, especially if you design it properly and take advantage of that interior first.
Yeah, so just to kind of tack on to what Craig was saying about the running game, I love the idea about the power and the gap and the duo up front. I think that's really important. If you watch what Baltimore did to them, Baltimore killed them with trap and wham and counter concepts. So they let those defensive ends come screaming upfield. They picked them off with a pulling tackle or guard or tight end, and then they cut back underneath it. And there were huge gaps. And I think a lot of their blocking schemes really surprised the Texans. I mean, there were plays where Henry was 6, 7, 8 yards downfield before anybody got a glove on him. So lots of opportunities, I think, to gash them in the middle of their defense. If you can kind of take their speed and aggressiveness and use it against them and kind of catch them off guard with some of those pulling, like kind of blindside type blocks, and give yourself a chance to cut back and run underneath the gaps that they're creating by screaming up the field.
I don't know about you guys, but going and watching the Texans, I was really surprised what a fall off Fatakasi has had in the run game. I mean, once his calling card, and now, I mean, he doesn't look anything like the guy that we've been covering or wanted in free agency a couple of years ago.
Yeah, definitely not the same guy. And you've got Autry, who's just all about getting to the quarterback, not really playing the run very well either. So lots of opportunities in the interior.
Yeah, absolutely. Fatakasi had quite the fall off. I was a little shocked myself when I saw how bad he was as far as just standing his ground, manning up against the surge right off of the snap of the ball. Dude gets rocked back in ways I did not see happen with him. What Fatakasi was a jet first, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember this version of him. It seems like I don't know if it's a regression in ability or what. He just doesn't seem to have the same anchor, and teams are taking advantage of it weekly.
Yeah. So just adding on to that aggressiveness, it really feels like not only up front, If you are window dressing, you can kind of use their aggressiveness against them. But it really feels like there's a big opportunity in the middle of that field when you got them kind of biting on some play action, some stuff like that, because it feels like the middle of this defense is probably one of their biggest weak points. The run defense is bad, but just in coverage, this second level isn't all that good. They have Henry To'oTo'o, who took the bulk of their snaps. Christian Harris is in there, and now they've got Azeez Al-Shaair there, which is going to be the first time all three of them have played together all season. So we'll see just kind of like if there's any, familiarity where they got to, get back to what they were at one point in training camp, but they haven't played together all season. So it'll be interesting to see how they mesh. Devin White's another guy that's part of that group, but he kind of lost favor. He got a bunch of snaps last week against the Titans, and in a game that didn't really matter for the Titans. So he was getting some garbage time snaps, but you're not going to see him a lot on Saturday, I don't believe. They haven't been rolling him out the last few weeks. But this is kind of the group to go after. They have a lot of problems in coverage because they are a very aggressive unit. They bite on play action pretty often. You saw it on tape the more you watched them. The Texans actually have a .22 EPA, which is the expected points added. When offenses target the Texans' middle of their defense in the middle of that field, they are 25th in the NFL in that regard, and Justin Herbert just happens to be top 5 in EPA when targeting the middle of the field. That just feels like an easy drag and drop type plays you want to run on Saturday, is targeting that middle of that field. We saw because I think there's a lot to take from not only that Baltimore game, but the Kansas City game before it, even that Miami game a little bit too. But it felt like Miami gave a little bit of a look. Kansas City started to really give it to them, and then that's when the Ravens beat them down with that run game and that play action. We saw the Ravens Derrick Henry ran it down the Texans' throat. And then they killed them on play action over the field with Mark Andrews. They had a wide open touchdown off play action at the goal line just because they were selling out on the run at the goal line on Derrick Henry. And then they had the biggest play of the day with kind of a leak out from Mark Andrews down the field. And then he had Harris in coverage, and you couldn't run with Mark Andrews. So that middle of the field is going to be kind of open for business. And I think something that we're going to see a lot of point of contention early, that they're going to focus on that middle, open stuff up wide. They're probably going to open it up with a run game to start, just like the Ravens did, the Chiefs did. But it's not just the tight ends too, like Mark Andrews. They got a lot of run with running backs out of the backfield. The Ravens did, the Titans did, Achane did with the Dolphins. They have given up an explosive play in 3 of the last 4 games to running backs. The only time they haven't was last week against the Titans, and the Titans are terrible. They're a top 5 draft pick for a reason. They're an awful, awful team. So you got anybody that can catch passes out of the backfield, you got a big opportunity for explosive plays against these linebackers in coverage. Something else, just something to keep an eye on, not just the tight ends and the running backs, but what I'm really curious about is what they're going to do in the slot, because there's a big void they left when Jalen Petrie went down, a favorite of mine during the draft season, and then also when Jimmy Ward went down. Once that happened, things got pretty bad. In fact, this week they signed Anthony Everett, and they just want to get some more bodies there. And I know, Akuta's there, and they've got Stingley and Lassiter. But one guy that's been kicking into the slot pretty often has been Miles Bryant, and he has been toast. He has been just awful in the slot, and that just feels like a major weak point in a pretty strong cornerback group. But seeing Miles Bryant on the field is going to be a guy that's going to be targeted a lot. And then also kind of just – and that, when you look at a guy like McConkey who lines up, 70% of his snaps in the slot, you think that he's going to be a go-to target. When you look at, like, a lot of people are talking about, like, what are the Texans going to do with Ladd McConkey? And there's been a lot of talk about, Derek Stingley. He normally shadows the wide receiver 1, but I don't think Stingley shadows Ladd McConkey here in this game. It just feels like when you look at Stingley, going back and watching it, he only has like 14 total snaps in the slot. And then if you've got Ladd McConkey, who's almost 3/4 of his time this season has been in the slot, I just don't see Stingley sitting there full time waiting for McConkey in the slot. I just don't think that happens. I think once McConkey goes out wide, he'll follow him, but I don't think it's a shadow for shadow type thing, 1-for-1. I think it's more likely we see Lassiter match up with McConkey more than likely. But yeah, that middle of the field, not only with the slot corners, but with these linebackers and then the running backs out of the backfield. I mean, there's a very advantageous matchup there against those linebackers.
So everyone in the middle of the field.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah.
All of them. You watched them, you see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something else that I noticed too is, I was talking about the pre-snap motion and the jet motions and things like that. Their corners and linebackers, I think because they're getting torched by running backs and tight ends, they're hyper aggressive on anything that looks like a wide receiver screen or a swing pass. So you can definitely challenge their aggressiveness and also challenge their eye discipline by throwing motion in front of them. And I saw it repeatedly. I'm sure you guys saw it too. They'd have a wide receiver in the slot. They'd motion somebody across the field, make it look like a wide receiver screen. That slot corner would just completely ignore the slot wide receiver and try to go right after the guy in motion. And you get an easy slant for a 15 or 20-yard gain right in the middle of the field. And you're getting posts, you're getting slants, you're getting digs. All these things are working. And I mean, you're talking like 6, 7, 8 yards of separation because they're dropping guys in coverage specifically to try to stop those wide receiver screens. So with Ladd having some success on some of those wide receiver screens, it could open up some plays down the field for QJ this week. Kind of using Ladd as a decoy and creating explosive plays with QJ. And I just think there's going to be all kinds of opportunities, especially off of play action. They're going to be flying downhill trying to stop Dobbins. They're going to be flying downhill looking for those wide receiver screens. Lots of opportunities to get easy pitch and catch for big gains, catch and run for big gains, really between the numbers in particular, but in the middle of the field in general.
That defense as a whole is a lot less disciplined than it had been last year, which is really surprising to me. So when I'm thinking about it, and Jamie, you mentioned this as far as the window dressing and everything is concerned, something else to add to that. I'd like to see Herbert switch up his snap count this week because I think you can get some really easy yards on offsides penalties and neutral zone infractions this week. They're always looking to hunt. And I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that they've been so susceptible to bigger plays, but it feels like they're trying to overcompensate for the fact that they're not as consistent on that side of the ball as they should be or what they have been in the past. So, yeah, I would absolutely be game for Herbert to just switch that snap count up and see if you can't get, in a situation where you're talking about 2nd and 4, you can get a free first down, 2nd and 5 or something like that, and keep drives going just based off of gamesmanship and them not being disciplined.
They really struggle containing quarterbacks in the pocket too. Lots of opportunities for Herbert to use his legs and extend and create plays that way. In those 2nd and 4, 3rd and 4 or less kind of scenarios, I wouldn't mind seeing maybe 4, 5, 6 zone reads and see if you can take advantage of those edge players crashing downhill and creating a lane for Herbert to run. I think that could be an easy way to get some easy conversions on key downs early in the game.
Which is why I want to see a little bit more pistol as far as formations are concerned, because of that opportunity to have that two-way go. It's not overly predictable. You can have a running back lined up behind you, and you can call the playmaker adjustments or calls at the line to switch, direction, whether you want to go from left to right, whatever. You have a kill play for the opposite direction, or if you just want to something up the middle, even something as simple as a draw. But I definitely want to see more pistol to give that opportunity for Herbert to be more mobile and have those options.
Yeah, because they have to find some way to slow down both Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, because those two feels like one of the biggest strengths of that defense is those edge rushers. And it feels like because they've been plagued with all these injuries, D'Amico has just been like, hey, pin your ears back and go get us, some sacks, go get us some 3rd and longs. Hope, that, guys like Stingley or Lassiter can get something on the back end, because these dudes can wreck games. And if you've got Herbert who can run outside and get those extra yards and be able to have some design runs and then force them to have to contain and not just pin their ears back and go, it's going to be really helpful, because those two have like 23 sacks between the two of them. they wrecked games. The more Texans games you watch, like the first matchup against the Titans, they absolutely demolished them. That home game against the Colts, those two went ham. And then they took over that Patriots game. Even that Bears game, like Caleb was in hell. I mean, they both Anderson and Hunter were just teeing off. And granted, the Bears offensive line were just god awful this season, but Caleb was not happy that game. And that was early in the season too. It was a very welcome to the NFL type moment because they were just teeing off. And then you add like Derek Barnett, who isn't very consistent, but it feels like it's pretty streaky, where like if he has a good game, he might rack up a sack and a half, a tackle for a loss. Last week against the Titans, he kind of just was able to do whatever he wanted against the Titans. But those two can really put their imprint on a game. And together, they've really given teams fits. And luckily, the Chargers have Alt and they have Slater. But they're going to have a pretty impressive performance because those are, one of the better, pass rushing duos in the NFL right now. And to me, it kind of feels like one of those games where you go, look, not only are you telling Joe Alt, but you're telling the fans, like, this is why we drafted you so high. You have to go out against some of the best NFL pass rushers, and you have to go help us win a playoff game. This feels like it's absolutely teed up for a guy like Joe Alt to show everybody, not only for himself, but for everybody watching, going, we drafted him 5th overall because we needed him to go against a guy like Will Anderson Jr., like Danielle Hunter, stop him, and help Herbert get a pocket enough to go win us a playoff game on the road. That feels like beautiful, kind of like a poetic moment if they could get that stop on Saturday.
This is kind of what I meant by a mirror match, right? Because you look at the other side of the ball, they've got Hunter and Anderson. You're looking at Slater and Alt, and the weakness on the interior of the offensive line for the Chargers, the weakness for the Texans in the interior of the defensive line. So at this point, it's just like who's going to basically out scheme who to take advantage of the weakness the best. But yeah, I feel like is where the difference in the game is going to be made. And it's super cliche to say, because it's a football thing. The game is won in the trenches. I think especially this week, that's going to be key though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You got to protect Herbert. You can't be giving up easy sacks. If Hunter or Anderson goes off and we're looking like that 3 or 4 sack game that I'm blanking on his name. Not Barnett.
Garrett.
Oh,
Garrett. Miles Garrett had earlier in the season.
The other Garrett.
Yeah, the other Garrett. They're in big trouble. So those two really have to hold up and do their part. And if they can run those guys around the hoop and kind of make them extend their path to the quarterback, it's going to open up some opportunities for Herbert to break the pocket and create with his legs. And it's just going to make things that much easier on offense.
Yeah.
Got to stay ahead of the sticks on down distance, man. This is where teams like this feast. You got premier pass rushers like that, and that's all they want to do. I mean, they're great against the run as well. There are no slouches there. But if you want to have a game turn on you really quickly, this is one of those where you can't find yourself in like 3rd and 8+ consistently. So those early down play calls have to be efficient hopefully Greg Roman learned his lesson from some of his mistakes early in the season. He's not doomed to repeat them when he gets into a tight spot in a playoff game.
Well, I feel like he's definitely learned from his experiences, and I feel like he and the offense are peaking in a way that probably nobody really expected going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
With the way they've opened things up, all that play action on 1st and 2nd down early in the game, creating opportunities to run the ball late in the game. These are just things that work, and I'd be shocked if he went away from it at this point.
Yeah. While we're still on the Texans defense, I just want to say, man, the more I watch Derek Stingley, I mean, that dude is making a conversation for being like a top 5 corner in the NFL. The season he's having, he has been incredible. He is as close to a lockdown corner as the Chargers are going to see this season. He has been incredible. And also Kamari Lassiter, a guy that we liked during the draft process, another dude who's having a really, really good season. Those corners have been really impressive the more you watch them.
Yeah, they really have.
You see why Brandon Staley made that visit up to LSU a couple of years ago. Stingley's
in person.
Stingley's been that guy ever since high school, freshman at LSU. Just I'm not surprised. I've been able to watch it for a really long time, so just excited to see him blossom in the NFL as well.
Yeah. Kalen
not this
Bullock.
week.
Yeah, not
No,
this week.
no.
Yeah.
Take a break, Stan.
Yeah, Kalen Bullock's another guy that's had a fairly good season, but the dude who's been on the back end that bites on almost everything. That dude is so over aggressive, and it was the same thing. USC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he
same
was
thing,
one
man.
of our least favorite.
Yeah. But
I
man,
hate him.
he bites on everything. So anyway, he's going to be the biggest recipient of that kind of window dressing and the play action for sure.
And
They're
if
bringing
you're
him alive.
if you're winning off of play action and you're creating some of those opportunities with window dressing for free looks in the middle of the field, it's just going to set up double moves later in the game. And Roman has been really good with some of those double moves and option routes the last few weeks. So it just seems like this is one of those opportunities that if they can protect Herbert and they can keep him clean, there's going to be opportunities to get huge chunk plays up and down the field. And they should be able to put some points up on the board.
Okay. Anything else? Any other words about this Texans defense before we flip sides?
Bah humbug.
All right. So let's go opposite sides. So now we covered Texans defense. Let's go to Texans offense and the Chargers defense. So Craig, if you are Jesse Minter, what's a big focal point for you?
For me, it's got to be contain Joe Mixon. The dude's the definition of a rhythm back. Like think about a streaky jump shooter in basketball that gets like 3 or 4 in a row to go from mid range, and then he starts feeling it. So he'll extend out to like start launching it from like 25, 26 feet. And like that's where you can't let him get going. Like if you only look at his rankings amongst backs in the leagues, it won't wow you this year, partially because he missed a few games. But when you actually go through the season and watch games like that week 1 performance against Indy or like that 4-game tear he went on from weeks 3 to 6, you really kind of see the ability to take over, should I say, in games, almost single-handedly. And on the flip side, the funny thing is the Texans aren't like a super efficient run game, but like this is one of those things that threw me off because I assumed they were a little bit better before I went and watched it. The Chargers cannot do like that upside down thing where, they take a team's weakness and turns it into a strength for that particular day, because if you allow that to happen, Mixon can get on a heater and can get ugly really, really quickly. So I want to say his high in rushing yards, I don't think he's eclipsed 60 yards since week 16. So he's had a rough go of it for the last few weeks. But it's like I'm saying, we've all seen the talent. We saw him as a Bengal. We know, what he can do as a back. He's very explosive. What I want to see and what I expect is Deion Henley to make himself very familiar with Mr. Mixon on Saturday. And if you can also like get Derwin going as a run blitzer, maybe meeting him at the handoff or tracking him on those stretch plays backside, they should be in pretty good shape. He's not used much in the way as a receiver. They use him some, but I wouldn't say they feature him in that role. He was like sub 40 in receptions on the year, but he can definitely be effective though. He will get his touches. Like the opportunities are going to be there. He averaged around 24 touches a game on the year. So they're going to feed him the ball. So you're going to have to get used to him having the ball and making sure that he doesn't get in a groove. Also think there's a huge opportunity for Poona Ford to have a special performance on Saturday, by the way. Like that combination of Juice Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson on the interior ain't it.
No, it is not. No. And it is true. He is very streaky. We saw he had like 100+ yards in like 7 of his last 10 that he played. They went 5-2 whenever Mixon ran over 100. But as the Texans kind of limped to the finish line here at the end of the season, Mixon was a non-factor. He had like 129 combined yards. He's pissed at Mixon that he threw stuff. That's how mad Craig was. How bad Mixon's been the last
You heard that?
4 games. Yeah, we heard it.
Hurt my heart.
He's pissed. Last 4 games, 129 yards, no touchdowns. He is just trending in the wrong direction. But if you let him get going, the Texans were 5-2 when he got over 100 yards. So it is definitely going to be a big focal point, because I'm sure we'll get into the wide receiver core and the injuries that happened there. But if Joe Mixon's rolling, so goes this offense. And so, it's going to be big to stop that run.
Yeah, got to stop the run. Got to put them in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, so you can make CJ Stroud uncomfortable. That's going to be super important. I think for me, the biggest key is making Stroud uncomfortable, but not necessarily through pressure. I think it's through simulating pressure and using that simulated pressure to confuse him with coverage. I was kind of surprised watching him, especially over the last few weeks. When he came out in the draft a couple of years ago, he was by far my QB1. And it was because he just seemed like he was a guy who always had the answers before the snap.
Mm-hmm.
He was so calm and collected in the pocket, so comfortable. He just knew where the ball was going, couldn't really fluster him. And over the last few weeks, I feel like teams have been frustrating him and flustering him on a pretty regular basis. You see him like jumping to throw the ball from the pocket. He's kind of flinching and twitching in the pocket. He's getting happy feet. He's sailing balls high over the middle of the field. He's having a hard time layering balls at times. And I think if you can take the middle of the field away from him with coverage, specifically looking at like cover 2 and cover 5, maybe mixing in the occasional one-on-one coverage, and force him to layer the ball down the boundaries against zone coverage and flood the middle of the field, I think you can give him some trouble, and you might get a couple of misthrown balls and a shot at some turnovers. So the Chiefs and the Ravens did this really well, where it looked like they were coming with everybody on almost every play, and then they drop 6 or 7 back into coverage and just let 4 come, and they had a lot of success. And he had a hard time diagnosing, like changing roles between the safeties before the snap, or after, I should say, after the snap at times. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for turnovers. You just need to speed him up by making it seem like you're bringing the house. And then, like I said, some cover 1, some cover 2, some cover 5, get the middle of the field flooded, force him to layer that ball between the corners and the safeties. Make sure your linebackers are getting depth and you're squeezing some of those routes so that he has to layer the ball in like perfectly to make those plays. And I think you've got a shot at having a really good day.
Jamie, you were saying that as far as simulated pressure and disguising coverage, one look that I think would work really well, and I've seen it happen. I think there were at least 1 or 2 picks that I saw him throw literally against the same disguise. You're playing 3, but you line up in 2. And so one of the safeties rotates down into the robber position, and the other safety takes the deep third, and he almost doesn't care. He'll still throw a seam regardless. It's almost as if he doesn't see the rotation of the safeties, or he trusts his arm too much. One of the two. Either way, just disguising those coverages like that pre-snap throws him into all sorts of fits. So again, it's not even necessarily, like you mentioned, getting actual pressure. It's just making him see ghosts, essentially. Having his eyes downfield, looking at things that aren't there, not able to properly diagnose it before he makes the decisions. It almost seems like he's predetermined where he's going to throw the ball against the coverage he thinks it initially is, and he just never resets.
Yeah. Simulating pressure is going to be huge. It just feels like I don't know what it is, if he's seeing ghosts or he's just like piling on bad game after bad game, but he is just not the same he was last season, or even what he was at the beginning of the season. And a lot of that has to do with the injuries throughout this team on offense and defense, but also just how bad this Texans O-line's been and the injuries that are occurring there too. With the injuries, they've had to shuffle a lot. We found out today that Shaq Mason is officially out. So one of their better offensive linemen gone now. And then they've had to shuffle this brand new line that they rolled out last week against the Titans, which is from left to right, Laramie Tunsil. They put Titus Howard, and then they have Jarrett Patterson at center. They've got Juice Scruggs at right guard now. And then the rookie Blake Fisher is out on the edge at right tackle. Kendrick Green has been swapped in and out of that lineup. He's just been so terrible that they had to put Juice Scruggs in, who was originally replaced by Green, but then Green was worse than Juice, and now they brought the Juice back. So now they've got Juice Scruggs coming back in, and they have just been a mismatch of terrible pairings. It's like the island of misfits toys. It's a terrible group of offensive linemen all season, and this group has been 6th in the highest pressure percentage in the league. They're 10th in sacks and pressure percentage, and they're 10th worst against the blitz. So not only simulating pressure, but also picking your spots, because you can get real creative where you're sending pressures. The stunts, the twists have been awful, especially on the interior for the Texans. They haven't been able to pick it up. And this
sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's not much different than Chargers, but so we've seen it, we know it. But this D line is going to have to figure out a way to contain CJ Stroud as well. We know that you put that pressure on, and you don't even really have to rush 5, 6, 7 to get after Stroud. You can still rush your 3 or 4 and still get to him somehow. And then you got to make sure that you contain him, because if you got Stroud using his legs, make him throw the ball. That's what we're saying. Contain Stroud, make him try to layer those balls, make those throws over the middle, simulate pressure, and speed up the game a little bit for him. Because once, Bosa and Mack and Cooley and even Dupree can just set a secure edge, box Stroud in, it's going to be a very, very long day for CJ, because these edge players have got a pretty favorable matchup. They're going to get their opportunities, and hopefully they can make it count. To start the season, we said, and I feel like a broken record because we've said it all year, the edge group is supposed to be one of the biggest bright spots of this defense. It is one of the lowly spots of this defense. The playoffs, where Bosa said he was going to be healthy towards the end of the year, and that's when he was going to start hitting his stride. It's time to show it, because I haven't seen it yet.
I was literally about to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know if the butt cheek is still sore or what, but Joey, if there's a week to get over that or shoot that thing up, do whatever you got to do, this is the one. We're talking about Fisher out there. You one-on-one on an island with him, you should easily be able to win your one-on-ones. Everything on that side of the line, even if you want to get Thule in there to mix some things up, you can run your stunts and twists with those two. We've seen it be effective in the past. But even just, again, straight up one-on-ones, you should win your matchup, specifically Joey Bosa on his side of the line, and your guys on the interior, like I mentioned before, Poona Ford, Tier Tart, who's actually been a very good pass rusher. As one of the bigger guys on the interior as well. So there's an opportunity here to not even have to get fancy. You can dominate, or at least leave your imprint on the game by just rushing just 4. Just get home with 4. You should be able to do that. Play coverage, mix coverage up on the back end. If you make Stroud think about it a little bit, you'll probably have an extra tick or 2 for your guys on the defensive line to get home. So I don't even think Jesse Minter has to get overly creative in his blitz scheme. If he does, I'm sure he'll dial that up. But from the way it seems now, from the games that I've watched, the performances of this offensive line, the amount of money that you're paying these edge players, even though granted, a couple guys took some pay cuts, they're still making a butt ton. You got to make it happen this week. And Laramie Tunsil is still one of the best tackles in the game, so he'll probably win his fair share of matchups. But on the opposite side of the line, there's no excuse not to wreak havoc this week.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really going to come down to the interior guys winning their one-on-one matchups. Craig mentioned Poona. I think there's an opportunity for Ford, for Tart, and for Fox to all have good days on the interior. And the way that you win in terms of making CJ Stroud uncomfortable is with interior pressure, pushing guys into his lap so he can't move his feet. If he can't climb the pocket, his footwork breaks down, and that's when the ball starts sailing. So drive guys back into his face, make him drop his eyes, make him look at the rush. This game needs to look a lot like the first half of the Bengals game, where Burrow wasn't seeing wide receivers. He was just seeing the pass rush, and his eyes were dropping, and he had happy feet, and he was terrified because nobody was blocking for him. That's what this game needs to look like. They should be able to do that, like Craig said, without getting too fancy. They should be able to win one-on-one matchups. If that's not working, mix in a healthy dose of twists and stunts. You can do tackle and stunts, gives them fits. You can do tackle stunts inside. That's going to give them fits. They should be able to get home with 4. It should not be that complicated. And if you can win with 4, maybe 5 at the most, and drop 6 or 7 into coverage, you're going to give Stroud fits, because he's not going to have those windows to throw into. You're going to be able to squeeze those spaces he wants to throw the ball to. You're going to get your hands on some footballs.
Yeah, I think it's all about picking your spots with Minter. If you're blitzing with a 3rd and long, they have problems picking it up as it is. I don't feel like you got to blitz every down to really get to Stroud. There's going to be easy one-on-one matchups for these guys to win. And Blake Fisher, while a lot of people had high hopes for him, maybe later on, right now in year 1, he's had his struggles. And so whoever's on that right side, not only the interior, I mean, I totally agree. I think Poona Ford and Fox and even Tart could really have a big impact on this game, and they probably should. I think on whoever's lining up, if they're swapping Khalil or Bosa or whoever on the right side, is going to really have some good opportunities to get after quarterback. So I think for Minter, it's just about picking your spots, when to blitz, because you don't really have to.
I would also look for some opportunities to have Joey at the 3 technique, maybe even have Mac at the 3 technique with either Bud or Thule flanking them, so that you can create some opportunities with guys, with the offensive linemen getting hyper focused on Mac and Joey inside and just looping somebody around them through that A gap.
Jamie, you're mentioning that, and it, actually crossed my mind a couple weeks ago. I don't think we've seen much of Joey reduce down inside at all this season, which to me was a little confusing, just because even if he's not 100%, he's still quicker than the majority of your guards in the league. So he can make things happen. So it's just looking for him to be a little bit more involved there, especially on obvious passing downs. And when you're talking about getting like those NASCAR packages going, where you get Thule on the field, you can get Dupree in there, you can really mix things up on third down, specifically those 3rd and long calls. I wouldn't be surprised to see him kick inside a little bit more. I think as far as Minter goes, when we're talking about having the answers, I think he does. One of his specialties is showing the exact same looks, running the same coverage out of it, and then just flipping the coverage to the opposite side, or even showing the same look and doing something completely different out of it, like showing simulated pressure, or actually sending guys with the pressure that he shows, flipping it to the opposite side, showing pressure from that side, and then having those guys drop out. All of these different things he can do to be creative without actually having to go overboard is what makes me feel really confident in regards to the defensive game plan this week. Guys just have to execute. Yeah.
Anything else? What else offensively? Talk about Joe Mixon. Talk about this offensive line.
Well, I just think we have to make sure that there's a way to account for Nico Collins and for Dalton Schultz.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 primary targets. Schultz is the guy that Stroud really looks to when he's in trouble. That's kind of his check down, his safety blanket. I think you got to commit 2 people to Collins at all times, whether that's a linebacker checking him off the line of scrimmage and somebody picking him up, or you're bracketing him with a corner and a safety. You got to find some way to take him out of the game and make Stroud throw to some of those lesser weapons. Just make somebody else beat you.
Yeah. It feels like with the loss of Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, they only have one real major receiving weapon, and that's Nico Collins. And the Ravens did a nice job of bracketing Nico Collins and saying, have somebody else beat me or beat us. And John Mechie and Dalton Schultz got a ton of targets that game. They had 14 and only caught 7 of them. So Mechie's hands have been pretty questionable. And then he had to dirt a lot of them in front of Schultz because the pass rush was getting there. But it just feels like Houston haven't had a 100-yard receiver in over a month. They are desperate to put up yards. And Collins feels like the only true guy that can put them up in a hurry. And a lot of Collins receptions, it feels like the more you watch the Texans is, Collins is getting open on those kind of circus plays where Stroud can improvise and it's just backyard football. And Collins can go just get loose downfield, and then Stroud will find him somewhere. So, we talked about containing Stroud, making sure that he's not, able to improvise outside the pocket. That kind of feels like where the big chunk plays are for Collins. And if they can find a way, just like the Ravens did, to account for Nico Collins, bracket him, hang somebody on top of him, an extra man on top of Collins, and dare somebody else on the I almost said Ravens, the Texans receiving core to make something happen, it just won't happen. And you saw Baltimore do exactly that on Christmas, no less.
Yeah, it sounds simple enough. Yeah, very much so. How dare they? 2 points. Jeez, 2 points. That's terrible.
On Christmas?
Yes, crazy. I'd rather you just get goose egg. That's embarrassing. So, yeah, I mean, ideally, you shut down Nico Collins and you do whatever you need to in order for that to happen. I mean, he's going to get his here and there, but you can't let him be the reason why they stay in the game or potentially win it. You know exactly who their key weapons are right now in the passing game. He's it. Dalton Schultz is definitely someone they can utilize, but I think that you have the answer for that as well in your secondary. If you want to attach Derwin James there, because I don't necessarily think that you're going to have to use him a bunch as far as the pass rush is concerned. So there are going to be options there, but even if you want to give him the Revis treatment. Like, you take your number one corner, which would be, I guess, kind of sort of assuming that's Fulton technically. And you want to put him over on who's the wide receiver 2? Is that Hutchinson? I think. Is that the number
Either
2 wide
Hutchinson
out?
or Mechie.
Or Mechie,
Yeah,
either
Mechie.
or. And then bracket Collins with your number 2 and a safety, like the entire game. Don't even chance it, because the one time you have him out there in one-on-one coverage, especially with Kristen Fulton, who has been known to bite on double moves, that's probably where you're going to see a big play happen. So, and just don't tempt fate. Whatever the game plan is, ensure that Collins is accounted for on every single play and make someone else beat you.
And Mechie is questionable to play Saturday, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So there was talk about Deontay Johnson maybe filling in.
I forgot
Mechie.
about old Deontay.
Yeah. That he might not go. But the one thing we haven't talked about is Joshua Palmer. Joshua Palmer is out. QJ questionable. J.K. Dobbins questionable for the Chargers. We assume both of them are going to end up playing. Who do you think fills in on that wide receiver 3 spot? We got a question from somebody in the chat about that. Hannon Derry. Who would you like to see at wide receiver 3? Is it Darius Davis? Is it Chark? Simi Fehoko get some run?
I don't think who is wide receiver 3 is necessarily important, because they're spreading the ball around so much the last few weeks that whoever's open is going to get the football. So against this defense, I think you're likely to see the tight ends produce quite a bit. You could see, Disley have some success on screens, which I'm sure they'll use some wide receiver, some halfback and tight end screens to slow down the pass rush. And then I think you could see Smart getting open on some of those seam routes, those deep overs, hard play action, get him free on a linebacker down the field for big plays. And then, Davis on those orbit motions we talked about, double moves, getting him open down the field. It seems like they're slowly expanding his role, and there are things they haven't put on tape for him yet. So I don't think who the wide receiver 3 is matters. I just think it's just go get open and you're going to get the football.
Yeah, Jamie pretty much took the words out of my mouth. Whoever's open is getting it. So I don't think you have a wide receiver designation. I mean, we all know by order of importance who's who on the roster. But I just think Herbert's in a groove right now, and Roman's been doing a better job with spacing to get guys open, which is something we criticized him for earlier in the season. And, Ladd accounts for so much. Like right now, teams are putting all eyes on him, and it's freeing other guys up. Like we've now gotten to a point where Ladd McConkey's consciously being double teamed. And so you're talking about, I know Fehoko comes back. You might see him get a few grabs. The tight end position is definitely going to be a key in this one. I feel like Stone Smart is going to make his emergence here in the playoffs. Like they get beyond this week, that's a name you're going to start hearing more and more about, because I feel like Roman said this at the beginning of the season, like there were plays in the playbook that hadn't been revealed and looked like he was kind of holding his cards close to the vest until they got later in the season. And now you're starting to see guys who weren't really a part of the offense earlier in the year becoming more focal points. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Stone Smart step up here in the playoffs. Again, Darius Davis, got touchdowns in consecutive games. So he's having more of, and it's not much to do this, because if you didn't have any touchdown receptions in your rookie year, it's not hard to have a career year as a receiver the next one. So he's already doubled up on that, should have 3. And, we're talking about an offense that's growing at the right time. Jamie keeps saying it, they're peaking, and you couldn't ask for a better scenario here than going into the playoffs and being able to put things on the field that teams can account for, because they've not been able to study it on film for the past 18 or so weeks. So they're just playing a guessing game. And for all of the criticism that we've given Greg Roman, this is probably the thing that he's done right that you can't really question at this point. The fact that guys are being involved in the offense that have been on this roster since last year and just couldn't find a place, Greg Roman somehow managing to get them involved and have them be effective. Yeah,
it kind of feels like that that Brady mentality where he'll throw it to anybody, whether you're Chris Hogan or Brandon LaFell or Shane Vereen, Jabbar Gaffney. It doesn't matter who you are. You don't have to be Rob Gronkowski or Julian Edelman. He'll get you the ball. And that just feels like the treatment that Herbert is right now, whether it's, Joshua Palmer or Simi Fehoko, or it's DJ Chark, or it's Darius Davis, or it's Stone Smart, or it's, any other tight end. he'll find a way to get somebody the ball. And so, yeah, it is not as important. Obviously, you'd love to have Palmer out there, but it doesn't feel like it's all that makes a big of a difference if he's not out there or he is.
Well, it'd be really cool if QJ could channel Jerry Rice again for a second straight week. That'd be awesome.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and Rivers. Yes, I'm sorry. Spiked Rivers did the same thing. That's true.
I mean, at the end of the day, Palmer's a guy who's going to catch maybe 3 or 4 passes in a game. It's not like he's got a huge role in this offense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is producing big plays when he catches the football, but he's not a steady contributor in terms of, big reception numbers or big yardage numbers. He's just making plays at the right time. And I feel like that's a role that any number of guys could step into with him on the sideline. You don't need them to fill out, 6 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. You just need them to catch a couple balls for 45 yards, maybe move the chains a couple times, and they've done their role as the wide receiver 3.
Yep. Okay, so we already talked about special teams, obviously. We talked about the offensive matchups, defensive matchups. Let's get into prediction, boys. How do we feel about this game, Jamie?
I feel good about this game. It's the matchup I wanted, like I said when the show started. I think they're going to win this game. And I don't want to say it's going to be easy, but I think at the end of the game, it's going to feel like it was relatively easy. I'm going to go 31-20. So they get a 2-score win.
Oh, wow. On the road.
On the road against a team that I think is kind of collapsing at the end of the season. Whereas I think the Chargers are peaking. I mean, you're talking about a Chargers offense that's held the ball for 40 minutes over the last 3 weeks. Has a 40-minute time of possession advantage over the last 3 weeks combined, and that most of that is in 2.5 games. They're converting almost 60% of their third downs, converting almost 63% of their red zone opportunities. These are all things that playoff offenses do to win football games. They control the football, they move the chains, and they score touchdowns. And that's what the Chargers are doing right now. And I don't really feel like this defense is capable of stopping them or really even slowing them down. So I think it's going to be a big game, and it's just going to really come down to getting the ball back in the offense's hands and giving them more possessions.
Yep. So I don't have them breaking the 30 threshold this week, but not that far off. So I have it as a 27-20 game. And a little bit of a caveat here. I don't think it's that close as far as the score is concerned. I think the Texans get a late garbage time touchdown that makes it look a little bit closer than what it actually was.
What was your score prediction?
27-20.
That was exactly what I was going to say. And I was going to say it was going to be 27-13. And then, like, with 2 minutes left, the Texans end up driving down the field while the Chargers just trying to burn clock. They score a touchdown. They recover the onside kick and then just get 2 straight first downs.
They start playing soft coverage and give up a bunch of chunk yards and a touchdown. Like, yeah, I just, no disrespect to the Texans. I just feel like the role that the Chargers are on right now, they're capable of actually stopping with what they have on their defense. And Herbert's playing some high level football, and the rest of any weapon, pick a guy, somebody's going to step up. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I mean, Texans are 4-5 in their last 9. The only team they've beat that are in the playoffs are the Bills, and that was over week 5. And they've suffered so many injuries since then. They are nowhere near that week 5 peak that they had. The Chargers are ascending. The Texans limped into the playoffs in a very, very weak division. This is the better team will win this matchup. The Chargers are the better team. They have the better record, and they're the better team coming into this game. They're getting hot at the right moment. I got 27-20 as well with Craig. So that's a clean sweep for us. One last thing. What about Zeke? How do you guys feel about the Chargers signing Ezekiel Elliott this week?
I think there was some panic early in the week that it was a sign that Slater might not play, but I think at the end of the day, this is really about shoring up the interior pass protection, helping to pick up some of those stunts and twists that have been beating them so badly. Zeke is still a really good pass protector. He also still does a good job of catching the ball out of the backfield, which is something they really haven't had. So if he's going to be on the field, which I'm sure he will be in certain situations, you could actually see him have a handful of catches and make a difference in this game that way and come up with some big blocks and pass protection to give Herbert time to throw the ball down the field.
Yep. Once again, he literally said everything I was going to say. I will add to it. I will add to this. I think there's an opportunity there for him in short yardage situations as well. You saw the Chargers get stymied inside the one last week. I still have no idea why they didn't at least try a quarterback sneak at least once. But Zeke's also a very good short yardage back. He still has that in him. Really, really good leg drive. I think I'd rather him than Hassan Haskins, and no disrespect to Haskins, but we know what that looks like.
No, go ahead and disrespect him.
No, hey, look, the guy's played
week?
better. He's played a little bit better as of late. I mean, he scored last week too, so I don't want to take that away from him. But with that being said, I still trust Zeke a little bit more in those situations. We know what he is as a pass protector. When we're talking blitz pickup specifically between the A and the B gaps, he's going to stonewall guys. And you need that when you're talking about a team who still suffers with regard to protecting against these twists and stunts. That's not going to affect Zeke at all. He'll step up, put his nose in the guy's chin, and give Herbert that extra tick or two. He'll need to get the ball out. So it makes sense to me. And then also, we didn't know what the Gus Edwards situation was going to be, but he's been practicing. So now suddenly you have a stable of running backs out of the blue.
I don't care about this. I just don't. I don't care. This does nothing for me. It just feels like another, vet signing that they've done in the past. It feels like they're in that mold where they're bringing a veteran who knows what they're doing. They can maybe squeeze out a couple games out of them, maybe a couple snaps out of them, and then when they fill that void and that running back comes back, whether it's Gus or Haskins or whoever needs to come back in, they'll bring him back and it'll be no big deal. So I don't care. Yeah, it'll help pass protection, but I don't care. Does it help? Does it beat out Haskins in short yardage situations? I hope so. But I just don't care about this. This does nothing for me.
I wish running backs could wear numbers in like the 50s, 60s, or 70s, because that's probably what they should have given him after they signed him. That's what he'll primarily be there to do if he plays.
Yeah. All right. How much does Azeez Al-Shaair worry you? Probably referencing him headhunting. Do you think any of that happens? Do you have any? I mean, I like him as a player.
Anything that takes the attention off of Derwin James or Joey Bosa, if he becomes a new bad guy, then let him have it.
I could see Derwin having a good game in this game. Kind of having him floating around, bracketing Collins, maybe coming up with a pick, a sack, a big game-turning play. This kind of feels like one of those games where Derwin might pop.
Yeah, I could see it. But what do you think? What do you think about?
I don't care.
Okay, all right. That's perfect analysis. I just said that. Yeah. I don't care. And he is not quite the same form that he was with the 49ers.
Yeah, I remember I wanted him that last free agent cycle.
He looked great. He looked great, but not so much right now. All right. Cool. I think we're good, guys. There was somebody who was, last thing. Jamie, how are you doing? I'm good here. I'm sure everybody's wondering how you're doing with the Fires.
I'm good. I'm probably 130, 140 miles away from the Fires, so
yeah.
We're all perfectly safe, but thank you for asking.
Yep, same here. All safe here. Craig's not even in the States, so.
No, I got a winter storm going on here, so
He's got something.
And in Texas, it's almost as bad because people have no idea what to do with themselves. If it's just a little bit of cold and precipitation, people freak out. I don't want to minimize the importance of what's going on in California, so it's probably a joke in poor taste, but prayers to everyone that's dealing with stuff out there. I have a coworker whose family has been affected by it. They have close family friends that have lost everything. So it's, definitely a rough time.
Speaking of which, Bobby Slolik's another guy that we were also high in, kind of falling off here towards the end of the season, especially with Texans fans.
Yeah, they're really struggling. But I mean, offensive line issues, wide receiver issues,
Stroud issues.
We can't all be Greg Roman, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that would be a thing?
Oh, perfect way to end. All right, guys.
Wait. Before we end it, one more thing.
I know it's coming.
Oh, All right.
Can we just talk about how beautiful it is that the Raiders sent Antonio Pierce out to a press conference to say he was staying, only to fire him 24 hours later? I love it.
No one loves him more than you.
Yeah, nobody loves him more than you. I wanted
Nobody.
Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce to get a lifetime contract.
Yeah, that would have been better. But if we can't have that, we can at least have Pierce looking like an asshole.
They one and done Telesco?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
How do you give a GM
it's a Tom Brady move, feels like to me. I feel like this is a Brady thing.
Granted, Tom Telesco sucks, and he shouldn't have got the job to start with, but how do you give a GM 1 year?
I'm telling you, man, I think Brady has part ownership in the team, and he's pulling some strings right now. If you had to ask me, I think he's got like heavily influenced the front office right now.
Just let him coach.
I'm thinking
at this point.
I'm thinking it's Belichick coming into GM and head coach. That's my guess.
Man, if he screws over Carolina like that, man.
Yeah.
Either that or Gruden.
Back? Gruden's coming back?
Oh God.
He's a name that's been popping up lately for them and other teams. I guess the league is okay with him coming back now.
Yeah, look what they'll forgive. Not a losing season, but bigotry and
racist emails. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
There's been rumors of Todd Monken, and that's a thing that I cannot have happen. Monken to the Raiders would be a bad move. As in, I love Monken, and I don't want him to go to the Raiders. It'd be a great move for the Raiders, is what I'm saying. And we don't want that. All right, cool. Jamie got his in. Did one last. I thought you were gonna say F Antonio Pierce, but
I didn't really need to say it. It was kind of just right there.
The Raiders said it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We will see you after the playoff game. Hopefully they get a win and we get another playoff podcast. Appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.